Hey, welcome back to Sister Pastor Network. I'm Cheree Haston, and I'm really excited to have my very first special guest because it is my mother, Sherry Middleton. We're here in her house, so what a cool place to get to talk to her a little bit about ministry and about being my first pastor's wife, and really being the one to invest in me about protocol, about just ministry, hearing from the Lord, marriage, mothering, everything. And so I'm really excited to have her today. Say hello, Mother.
Hello. Great to be here.
Mom, you are third generation pastor's wife. Our listeners know that I am fourth, so that makes you third. And so kind of give us a little bit of background on wonderful people that I call Mima and Papa. I'll let her tell you their real names.
My parents' names are Albert and Martha Davis, and my mother was a pastor's daughter, so she said, I would never marry a minister. And guess what happened? 2 years into their marriage, my dad accepted the call into the ministry and has been ministering for over 60 years. Mm-hmm. And he is the hero of my life because he has shown me what true godly love is. He has been a perfect example of the Father, our Heavenly Father. And my mother, in a true Southern Belle form, was the perfect pastor's wife. She even trained me at the age of 12 on how to lead a women's group. Did I want to go?
This is a story I've never heard.
Did I want to go to the women's meetings? No, I did not. But my mother said, one day you'll need these. And I said, why? I'm not going to marry a minister.
And then
Cheree's dad came along. So,
well, my grandparents are still married today. My grandfather still ministers, and my grandmother's had some health issues. And so it's been really neat watching the dynamic, in sickness and in health, how he still handles ministry and how he handles my mama. We come from a long line of strong women.
Yes.
But Mom, so you and Dad married in 1973, and so that was a whole nother era for women in ministry. Especially we are in the Spirit-filled, charismatic, Pentecostal, whatever you want to call it, camp, and that's how I was raised. And so kind of speak to that a little bit about sort of the evolution of how it was when you started, and tell them about, because you guys were a part of a denomination that didn't allow makeup and stuff like that, and then you pregnant with me was not. My mom is not as tall as she looks right now. I'm barefoot. I'm literally barefoot right now, so I won't be too tall for her.
Actually taller than her. She has on heels. She made me take mine off.
So go ahead and tell them, just kind of tell us a little bit about that evolution, and then I'll kind of jump in of what happened with me.
I did grow up very traditional. That denomination now does not adhere to those same standards. They begin to understand that being a peculiar person didn't mean you had to look odd in the way you dressed.
Right.
So, but yes, I grew up in that, and over the years, it evolved, and so I enjoyed that life because I look back now and realize that I was raised in a way that many people my age, even that I'm older than you, of course, were not raised that way. The standard of living, the value system, all of those things that make me who I am and what I tried to instill into you. But it was still very conservative. Everyone had an opinion about what the pastor's kids looked like, acted like, dressed like, whatever we did. Mm-hmm. And so I was okay with it. I just remember a few times some busybody church people making comments, but I look back now and I think that my parents probably shielded me from that,
right,
because they realized that could be detrimental to my perception of the ministry.
True, yeah.
So it was a very conservative arena, and my mother, this is a story I think you've heard me tell, was always very conscious of the church people and their perception of us, which we kind of grew out of that.
Yeah.
But
I was not that way.
We grew out of that. But I grew up when we were going to go shopping. My mother would say, "Oh, Sister so-and-so and her daughter want to go shopping with us. Well, I knew what that meant, because the first time I was like, okay. Mom said, well, what that means, hon, is you can't buy anything that is not a necessity. You can't buy anything unless it's something that we have to have, like soap.
Oh my gosh,
Well,
really?
as a young girl, I didn't
Yeah.
want to shop for soap.
Yeah.
I wanted to shop for clothes.
Yeah.
So, but that was kind of the arena at that time, because they would view, were we paying you too much by
Yeah.
the kind of clothes that you shopped for?
And Papa was bivocational, had a very successful electrical
Right.
business up until just a few years ago, I
Right.
guess, really. And so church wasn't even y'all's real source of income. I mean, you lived in a
Exactly.
parsonage and everything.
Right.
But what you're saying, and I think what this generation really needs to remember is how far that's come from the perception of. Do you remember that old thing that went around for a while? It said that they want you to be the perfect pastor is 30 years old, but he has the wisdom of a 60-year-old. They want to pay you $40 a year, but they want you to drive a Cadillac, or not drive a Cadillac, a nice Pontiac, and wear $300 suits.
Right.
And it's just this paradox world, really, that they wanted you guys to live in. But I'm saying, oh my gosh, because truly I haven't heard all of these stories. We've talked about this stuff for years, but this is really cool to hear. So how did that eventually evolve?
As I grew,
And did that other girl get to buy some clothes?
Oh, of course, the ones I wanted. But anyway, we digress.
You got some soap.
And I bought some soap.
Oh my gosh.
So,
Go ahead.
So
I'm just.
as I married your dad and got into the ministry, that changed.
The world is welcome that my parents married. Go ahead.
And that changed. We became less conscious of what others. And I remember when we made a very conscious decision. Actually, your dad said to me, "Our kids are not the preacher's kids. Mm-hmm. Nothing that they do is we don't demand things of them because they are the preacher's kids. They are to live a certain standard because they are our children, and
Right.
by a certain standard." And so that kind of changed from my generation of, you can't do that, you're a preacher's kid, to, no, that's not the best use of our money.
Right.
It's not about the perception of those around us. So that was a quick shift for us.
Yeah.
I mean, from the time that how I grew up, because your dad didn't grow up in a preacher's home.
Right.
He grew up in a traditional spiritual family, but not in
In a pastor's
preacher's
home. Right.
So he had a whole different view of it, which gave me a really good balance.
Yeah. Yeah.
And allowed you girls then to kind of be your own person.
Mm-hmm.
Now, did I struggle with that at times? Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just put in me, and I thought that there was a certain way you had to conduct yourself, and you couldn't, quote, embarrass the community.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
the family or the ministry. But we then grew even more from that to understand that you are our child first.
Right.
And then we then tried to raise you up as a leader in the ministry or in the church, not because of who your mom and dad were, but because of the giftings that God had put in you.
Right.
And that shifts that whole paradigm when you think of it in those terms.
Okay, so when I was about 5 years old, my parents went from the denomination that they were a part of at the time, and both parents had grown up in, to planting a church. And lots of people know I grew up in West Memphis, Arkansas. And my mom and dad, what's up, West Memphis? My mom and dad were church planters, in essence, and started a church, and it was non-denominational. And what I saw happen, we have about 2 minutes left. Let's kind of talk about the role of where you really went from an evangelist wife when you guys first got married, and then you went to traditional pastor's wife in these traditional churches in a very traditional, at the time, denomination, to I really got to watch you become this powerhouse speaker, which then led into business and government and everything. But how did that naturally evolve for you as far as what did that feel like? Because you're, like you just said, all of that stuff was ingrained in you. How did suddenly you're in this like charismatic world of non-denomination stuff, and they're not asking you to sing alto every Sunday. They want you to actually speak on prayer or the word or whatever.
Actually, your dad started, encouraging me to reach out. I guess he recognized the gifts. And in my mind, it was still my role in the ministry was to help with the music, help with the children's church,
Nursery.
lead the ladies group.
Yeah.
And so I was very comfortable in that zone because I had always been in that zone, even as a pastor's daughter. Those were not new roles to me. So to stand up and to preach, or I could even teach a class, but to preach was a whole different thing. And so he approached it from, well, you're going to be teaching in the service, and he started with things like Mother's Day.
Right.
Girl, my first Mother's Day sermon, I'm glad nobody recorded that. I think I repeated the same lines about 4 or 5 times for 30 minutes. It was so wise, I just had to keep saying it over and over.
Ingrain it in people. Yes.
But that was still not something I felt was my calling.
Yeah.
I felt my calling was to support him. I loved music, so being involved in the music ministry, working with children, and helping with the women's ministry.
So when did you watch yourself cross over?
It would have been in the late 70s, early 80s.
And then you really kind of found your voice.
Right.
In those times.
Right.
So just to kind of summarize this, what would you say to maybe, I don't even care if they're young, maybe they're just newer in the ministry or whatever, or maybe they've been in this traditional role and they're feeling this change starting to happen in them. What would you just kind of give as a quick advice of how to sort of find your lane and stay in it?
I think first you take time to listen to the Holy Spirit. What things are you most passionate about? And being able to open yourself to think, what I see my role as being, just because that's my comfort zone, isn't necessarily what's stirring in me.
Okay.
And what started stirring in me came from a deep time with the Lord and studying my Bible. I just got this tremendous hunger. And when I did, I found myself writing notes. I found those notes to become sermons that I didn't know that I would ever preach, but I had a notebook full.
Yeah.
And then as things started evolving, I really was hungry to get that out. Then God made that way and opened those doors. But it didn't happen overnight. It was from months or maybe even a couple of years of letting that stir around in me and pondering those things that the Lord had spoken, but making sure I was writing it down.
Right.
Writing it down. And then I'd already had a whole notebook full of sermons when the opportunity started happening.
Yeah.
And I felt it then.
Yeah, that's awesome. Mom, thank you so much for being with me today. You guys got to hear a teeny tiny snippet of what helped me grow into who I am today. I still call her all the time. If she doesn't hear from me one day, she's like, are you sick? Are you okay? But thank you so much for watching. And I know we'll get to have her back with us. And make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, share, get more people on board with us on Sister Pastor Network. And also tell us where you're watching from. I would love to know kind of where you are, what your role is, maybe lay ministry, are you in vocational ministry, bivocational, church planners, whatever it is. I would love to know that, love to connect with you on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all of the major social media. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for being with us today.